Welcome to this explainer. Right, let's jump straight into this, because today we're looking at one of the absolute most fascinating intersections in human history. We're talking about the exact point where ancient occultism slams headfirst into strict administrative bureaucracy. When we think of ancient magic, we almost always imagine these wild, totally uncontrollable forces, right? But what happens when humanity tries to put those forces into a spreadsheet?
It sounds like a joke. Do demons actually have middle management? But this provocative question is exactly what we're going to explore today. We're reframing ancient grimoires. So instead of looking at them just as, spooky, forbidden books of dark magic, we're going to see them for what they really were. Desperate, highly organized attempts by early humans to structure, manage, and ultimately control the terrifying unknown.
And to do that, we need our own chain of command for this explainer. We'll start with cataloging chaos, then look at Solomon's chain of command, followed by the demonic imperial court. After that, we'll hit management through sacred seals, and we will wrap it all up with the illusion of control. Let's get to it.
Starting off with Section 1, Cataloging Chaos.
Okay, to really grasp this, you have to put yourself in the shoes of ancient humans. They lived in a world filled with terrifying, unpredictable forces. Sudden plagues, natural disasters, illnesses they just couldn't explain. The world felt like a legion of chaotic entities that were completely out of their control. And then, enter the Ars Goetia. This is the first section of the incredibly famous 17th century text, The Lesser Key of Solomon, which details exactly 72 evil spirits and how to control them. And what is so fascinating here is the word grimoire itself. It actually evolved from the old French word for grammar. Just think about that for a second. Grammar is the ultimate system of rules and structure for language. So from the very beginning, a grimoire wasn't about unleashing chaos at all. It was driven by this fundamental human desire to impose grammatical structure onto the supernatural. And boy, did they need that structure, because the entities they were dealing with were just utterly bizarre. Take a look at the manifestations of this legion. You've got Augures, an old man riding a crocodile with a hawk on his wrist. Valifor, who is a bellowing lion with a donkey's head. Bodis, who shows up as an ugly viper before turning into a horned human with massive teeth. And if you look at older texts like the Testament of Solomon, they describe the 36 Stoichia. These are world rulers with the heads of dogs, oxen, and birds who inflict diseases. It is pure, unfiltered chaos. So how exactly do you manage a roaring lion with a donkey's head? Well, you build a corporate structure.
Which brings us to Section 2, Solomon's Chain of Command.
So if the demonic world is this disorganized nightmare, King Solomon was historically framed as the ultimate, unyielding CEO brought in to execute a hostile takeover. Seriously, the text described this step-by-step delegation of power, a literal Solomonic propret ladder. It starts at the absolute top. Archangel Michael hands Solomon a magical ring. Now, Solomon doesn't go after the entire legion at once. He's way smarter than that. He uses the ring to command just one mid-level demon, Orneus. Then he forces his brand new employee to stamp the chest of Beelzebub, the prince of demons. By binding the executive officer of the underworld, Beelzebub is then forced to summon his entire hierarchy of spirits. Solomon interrogates them, binds them, and literally puts them to manual labor to build his temple. He conquered the org chart from the top down.
And here is his ultimate executive order. In the strength of the name, King Solomon calleth thee. This wasn't some polite request. It was a binding command that forced spiritual forces into total, undeniable submission. He essentially turned a mob of chaotic monsters into a highly regulated workforce.
Moving right along to Section 3, the Demonic Imperial Court.
The writers of these grimoires basically mapped the underworld directly onto something they already understood perfectly, which was the rigid European imperial court system. The Ars Goetia catalogs exactly 72 mighty kings and princes. Not 70, not a whole bunch, but exactly 72. And this highlights a complete obsession with quantifying the supernatural. The logic is simple. If you can number it, you can measure it. And if you can measure it, you can manage it. And this brilliantly illustrates the bureaucratic mindset we've been talking about. You might wonder, why does the Goetia require specific ranks like kings, dukes, and presidents to function? Because in an imperial court, rank is absolutely everything. Every spirit must have a designated title, all the way down to knights. But it goes even further than that. Every single rank dictates the specific physical metal required to forge their seal of command. If you want to summon a president, you have to use a seal made of mercury. If you want a king, you need gold. It is this stunningly precise, mandatory procurement process just for conducting magical business. And the sheer scale of this bureaucracy is staggering. The text notes that King Paimon alone governs 200 legions of inferior spirits.
Think about that. The authors of the Goetia were obsessively cataloging chaos into a predictable, taxable inventory of power. They were literally mapping out exactly how many direct reports each demonic manager had under them.
Section 4, Management through Sacred Seals. Okay, so you have the org chart, and you know their ranks, but how do you actually interface with this demonic middle management? Well, you use their sacred seals. A seal is a unique geometric sigil that serves as a spirit's exact signature. In this deeply bureaucratic system, a seal acted as both a demonic employee ID badge and a binding legal contract. You couldn't just yell a demon's name into the dark and hope for the best. You had to have your paperwork filed correctly, geometrically speaking, to actually compel their obedience.
And hey, if you thought the paperwork was strict, wait until you see their office hours. The grimoires explicitly state that demonic kings can only be bound from 9 a.m. to noon, and then again from 3 p.m. to sunset. Marquises, on the other hand, they take the afternoon and night shifts. It's incredibly ironic, isn't it? These are supposed to be terrifying eternal forces of darkness, but they apparently have a strict 9 to 5 schedule and take a 3-hour lunch break? But what was the return on investment for all this rigorous management? Like, what were the deliverables here? Well, it turns out that after setting up this vast, terrifying cosmological bureaucracy, human desires were actually incredibly mundane and practical. Buer is summoned to heal diseases. Agaris, he teaches you a new language. Haganti makes you rich by turning metal to gold. And Andromalius basically acts as a cosmic police officer to punish thieves and find your stolen property. The whole system was essentially just a complex spreadsheet designed to obtain basic health, wealth, education, and legal victories.
Finally, Section 5, the illusion of control.
So why did ancient humans go through all of this bureaucratic trouble? Why invent specific metals for specific ranks and strict office hours for literal monsters? There is this fascinating quote injected into early 20th century editions of the Lesser Key of Solomon that states, "The spirits of the Goetia are portions of the human brain." Now, whether you look at this through an esoteric lens or a more modern psychological one, the implication is profound. Cataloging these demons wasn't necessarily about literal monsters lurking in the dark. It was a highly sophisticated psychological tool designed to manage human anxieties. By forcing a rigid imperial structure onto the forces of darkness, humanity created a profound coping mechanism. The real psychology of the Grimoire is that it took uncontrollable terror and turned it into a predictable, manageable system. It created a powerful illusion of safety through extreme categorization. By reflecting the hierarchies of their own human empires, kings, dukes, presidents, they made the terrifying unknown feel familiar. They conceptually bound the chaotic universe inside brass vessels and sealed them with lead, just so they could sleep at night feeling like someone, somewhere, was finally in charge.
Which leaves us with this final thought. We might smile today at the idea of a demon having a 9 a.m. to noon shift or needing a copper badge to do magic. But in our modern world, how do we still try to categorize, label, and spreadsheet the unpredictable chaos of our own lives? What are the modern grimoires that we use to give ourselves the exact same illusion of control? Thank you so much for joining this explainer. I hope mapping this out helped illuminate the fascinating architecture of the Legion, and I'll leave you to ponder your own mechanisms of control.